A girl is walking through a cemetery at night. She's a little nervous because it's dark, but it's the shortest way to get to her home. Suddenly, she hears a distinct tapping noise from the graves on her left. Her heart almost stops as she pauses mid-step. She hears it again. Tap, tap, tap. She screams and starts running down the path. After a while, she stops to catch her breath. This is silly, she thinks to herself. There must be a rational explanation. She slowly retraces her steps and walks towards the direction of the sound. Tap, tap, tap. There, sitting on a grave, is a gentle old man with a small hammer and chisel. He's tapping out an inscription on the tombstone. "Phew, you scared me," the girl says, relieved upon seeing him. "What are you carving there?" The old man turns to her and smiles. "I'm just correcting the spelling of my name." A bakery owner hired a young female shop assistant who liked to wear very short skirts and thong panties. One day, a young man enters the store, glances at the shop assistant and at the loaves of bread behind the counter. Noticing her short skirt and the location of the raisin bread, he has a brilliant idea. "I'd like some raisin bread, please," the man says. The shop assistant nods and climbs up a ladder to reach the raisin bread located on the very top shelf. The man, standing almost directly beneath her, was provided with an excellent view, just as he had thought he would get. When she descends the ladder, he decides that he had better get 2 loaves. As the shop assistant retrieves the second loaf of bread, one of the other male customers notices what's going on and requests his own loaf of raisin bread. After many trips, she is tired and irritated and begins to wonder, why the unusual interest in the raisin bread? Atop the ladder one more time, she looks down and glares at the men standing below. Then she notices an elderly man standing amongst the crowd. Thinking that she can save herself another trip, she yells at the elderly man, "Is it raising for you too?" "No," stammers the old man, "but it's quivering a little." "Son, Daddy, I fell in love and want to date this awesome girl." "Father, that's great, son. Who is she?" "Son, it's Sandra, the neighbor's daughter." "Father, oh, I wish you hadn't said that. I have to tell you something, son, but you must promise not to tell your mother. Sandra is actually your sister." The boy is naturally bummed out, but a couple of months later, "Son, Daddy, I fell in love again and she is even hotter." "Father, that's great, son. Who is she?" "Son, it's Angela, the other neighbor's daughter." "Father, oh, I wish you hadn't said that. Angela is also your sister." This went on a few more times, and finally the son was so mad, he went straight to his mother crying. "Son, Mom, I am so mad at Dad. I fell in love with 6 girls and I can't date any of them because Dad is their father." The mother hugs him affectionately and says, "You can date whoever you want. He isn't your father." A little girl says to her mother, "Mommy, when you were away at work, a strange lady came around." "Not now," says Mommy. "Wait until Daddy gets home." So they wait until Daddy gets home, and then Mommy says, "Now, dear, what were you saying about Daddy and the strange lady?" And Daddy starts to say something, but Mommy says, "You keep quiet. I'll be talking to my attorney in the morning. Carry on, dear." "Well," says the little girl, "Daddy told me to stay downstairs while they went upstairs, but I followed them without Daddy seeing me. And I saw them hugging and kissing at the top of the stairs. Then they went into your bedroom and shut the door, but I went up and looked through the keyhole. I saw them hugging and kissing some more. And then they started to take each other's clothes off, and they carried on until they had nothing on. And then the lady got on the bed and Daddy got on top of her." "Yes," says Mommy. "And then what happened?" "Then they did what you and Uncle Jack did when Daddy was in Vancouver last year," says the little girl confidently. A woman comes home early and finds her husband in bed with a girl. She is furious and threatens to kill them both. The husband says, "Believe me, darling, this is just a misunderstanding. I was driving home and saw this young lady trying to catch a ride. So I decided to give her a lift. I ask her where she needs to go, and she tells me she wants to visit some relatives but isn't sure about their address. So I took her home so she could check our phone book. Once there, I saw her dress was pretty ragged, so I decided to give her your old dress. Nearly 2 years that it's been hanging in the closet, and you never wore it. Then I saw her shoes were also about to fall apart, so I gave her your old shoes, which have been doing nothing but collecting dust for 3 years. Of course, she said thanks and then asked, Excuse me, sir, but is there anything else in this house your wife never uses? A young New York woman was so depressed she decided to end her life by throwing herself into the ocean. Just before she could throw herself from the docks, a handsome young man stopped her. "You have so much to live for," he said. "I'm a sailor, and we are off to Italy tomorrow. I can stow you away on my ship. I'll take care of you, bring you food every day, and keep you happy. When we get to Italy, you will be so glad you're alive." With nothing to lose and always wanting to see Italy, she accepted. That night, the sailor brought her aboard and hid her in a small but comfortable compartment in the ship's hold. From then on, every night, he would bring her sandwiches and a bottle of red wine and make love to her until dawn. 2 weeks later, she was discovered by the captain during a routine inspection. "What are you doing here?" asked the captain. "I have an arrangement with a sailor," she replied. "He brings me food and I get a free trip to Italy." "I see," the captain says. Then her conscience got the best of her, and she added, "Plus, he's screwing me." "He certainly is," replied the captain. "This is the Staten Island ferry." The madam of a brothel opened the door to find a frail, elderly man standing there. "Can I help you?" she asked. The old man replied, "I want Natalie." "Sir," said the madam, "Natalie is one of our most expensive ladies. Maybe you'd prefer someone else." "No, I must see Natalie," he insisted. Just then, Natalie appeared and told the man, "I charge $1,000 per visit." Without hesitation, the man reached into his pocket and handed her 10 $100 bills. They went upstairs for an hour, and after that, the man calmly left. The next night, the old man returned, asking to see Natalie again. Natalie explained, "No one has ever come back 2 nights in a row, and my rates are still the same, $1,000 per visit." The man took out the money again, handed it to her, and the two went up for another hour. To everyone's surprise, the old man showed up the 3rd night. Natalie, now intrigued, asked, "No one has ever used my services 3 nights in a row. Where are you from?" The old man smiled and replied, "I'm from Philadelphia." "Really?" said Natalie. "I have family in Philadelphia." "Yes, I know," the old man said. "Your father passed away, and I'm your sister's attorney. She asked me to give you this $3,000. An elementary school math teacher asked her class one day, "If there are 3 birds on a wire and a farmer shoots one, how many are left?" One little boy said, 2. But little Sally, realizing it was a trick question, said, "None, 'cause everyone knows that if you shoot at birds, they all fly away." The teacher smiled and congratulated her on her correct answer. Little Johnny, however, disagreed. "No, there would be one, the one that the farmer shot." The teacher replied, "No, Johnny, you're wrong, but I like the way you think." "Okay, teacher, I have a riddle for you," Johnny boasted. "Let's say 3 women are at a bar, and they each order a single scoop ice cream cone. The first one licks it gently around the edges, the second sucks the ice cream off the cone from the top, and the third gobbles the top, and then sucks the rest out of the cone. Which one is married?" After a few seconds of contemplation, the teacher replied, "Well, I think it must be the third one, the one who gobbles the top and sucks out the inside." Johnny grinned. "No, teacher, you're wrong. It's the one with the wedding ring, but I like the way you think." A farmer is suing a trucking company a week after getting into a serious accident. "Sir," the trucking company's lawyer says to the farmer, "my client claims that after the accident you said you were fine. Is that true?" "Well," replies the farmer, "I was driving to the fair and my favorite dog, Spot, was in the front seat with me and—" "I didn't ask for any details," interrupts the lawyer. "Did you or did you not say that you were fine?" "Well," the farmer continues, "my pig, Polly, was in the back of my truck. I was going to enter her in the fair, and—" The lawyer interrupts again, exasperated. "Your Honor, this man is clearly a fraud. I asked him if he said he was fine after the accident, and instead of answering, he starts telling this long-winded story about his dog and his pig." The judge, calm and composed, replies, "I think the story sounds quite interesting. Let's allow him to finish before we jump to conclusions." The farmer nods and proceeds. Anyways, this huge truck runs a red light, and it flings all three of us out of the truck and into a ditch. It's painful, and by Spot's whimpering and Polly's squealing, I can tell they're just as hurt as I am. Along comes a highway patrolman. He hears Spot whimpering and shoots him dead. He hears Polly squealing and shoots her dead. Then he walks up to me, looks me over, and... The farmer pauses for effect and asks, "Well, what would you have done?" An elderly couple is enjoying lunch at a quiet little diner when the husband leans in and says, "Do you remember our first time over 50 years ago, behind that old village tavern, by the fence?" She smiles. "Oh, Jim, of course I do." He winks. "What do you say we take a walk down memory lane, just for old time's sake?" Giggling like teenagers, they slowly make their way toward the tavern, leaning on each other and their walking sticks. A young police officer nearby overhears the conversation and, amused and curious, decides to follow from a distance, just to make sure everything's okay. What happens next stuns him. Let's just say sparks fly, literally, and the couple ends up on the ground, out of breath and giggling like school kids. As they brush themselves off and start to walk away, the officer, wide-eyed, approaches them and says, "Excuse me, that was impressive. What's your secret after all these years?" The old man chuckles. "Son, 50 years ago, that fence wasn't electric." Joe grew up in a town so tiny the welcome sign didn't bother with welcome, it just said hi. After escaping to the big city for college and law school, he returned home with a dream. In a place this small, being slightly impressive made you a local legend. He'd be the legal eagle of Mayberry, the courtroom king of cornfields. He opened a law office, leather chairs, framed diplomas, and one of those fancy pens you never actually use. He had everything except clients. Then one day, a miracle. A man walked briskly toward the front door. Joe's heart nearly burst from excitement. His first client. Showtime. Thinking fast, Joe grabbed his dead phone and launched into the performance of his life, a full-blown Oscar-worthy monologue worthy of Law and Order, Delusional Intent. "No, tell the Wall Street guys I don't do discounts," he barked. "$1 million minimum, or I walk. Yes, I'll be in court next week. Lead counsel, obviously. My associates, they're the backup dancers. I'm the Beyoncé of litigation. And someone warned the DA I can squeeze him in between saving democracy and lunch." 5 minutes of pure, undiluted bluffing. He finally hung up, turned to the visitor with a dazzling grin, and said, "Sorry about the wait. Things are a little hectic today. What can I do for you?" The man blinked. "I'm from the phone company. I'm here to install your line." A passionate duck hunter was searching for the perfect bird dog when he found one that could do the impossible, walk on water to retrieve ducks. Excited, he knew no one would believe him. So he invited his most skeptical friend, a guy who never seemed impressed by anything, to go hunting with him. As they waited, a flock of ducks flew by. Boom! A duck fell. The hunter's new dog leaped into action, literally walking on water to fetch it, never sinking, never getting wet. This happened all day. Every time a duck dropped, the dog strolled across the water like it was nothing, but his friend said, "Nothing." On the drive home, the hunter finally asked, "So, did you notice anything special about my new dog?" The pessimist scoffed, "Yep, he can't swim." After the Great Britain Beer Festival in London, all the brewery presidents decided to grab a drink together. The president of Corona sits down and says, "Senor, I'll have the finest beer in the world, a Corona." The bartender dusts off a bottle from the shelf and hands it to him. The Budweiser president follows, saying, "I'll take the king of beers, a Budweiser." The bartender serves him one. The Coors president nods and says, "Give me the only beer brewed with pure Rocky Mountain spring water, a Coors." He gets his drink. Then the Guinness president sits down and casually says, "I'll have a Coke." The bartender raises an eyebrow but hands him the soda. The other brewery presidents turn to him confused. "Why aren't you drinking a Guinness?" they ask. He smirks and replies, "Well, I figured if you guys aren't drinking beer, I won't either." An elderly couple is in bed. After a few minutes of silence, the old man lets out a fart and says, "7 points." His wife turns to him puzzled and asks, "What in the world are you talking about?" The old man grins and says, "I'm playing fart football." A little while later, the wife lets one rip and proudly announces, "Touchdown!" Tie score. 5 minutes later, the old man farts again and declares, "Touchdown! I'm winning 14-7. Frustrated by losing, the wife lets out a big one and shouts, "It's a tie game now!" Feeling the pressure, the old man decides he won't lose. He strains with all his might, but instead of a fart, he accidentally poops the bed. The wife hears the noise and asks, "What was that?" The old man calmly responds, "That's the whistle for halftime. Switch sides." On their wedding night, after a long and awkward struggle, the groom found himself frustrated and out of breath. He was not able to put that in. He finally blurted out, "No one has been here before me?" The bride, already irritated, raised an eyebrow and snapped, "Listen here, genius, whoever got here before, he removed the panties first." I swiped right on a girl without a picture, and we matched. So after a brief chat, I went to go pick her up. I wasn't expecting much, probably 300 pounds with bad skin, but hey, I was so desperate it was this or join an incel chat room. I walked up to the door, and lo and behold, 5'2", baby blue eyes, strawberry blonde hair, and all the right curves in all the right places. I couldn't believe my luck. I asked her what she did for a living. She said she taught Sunday school. Now I never had me a Christian girl, but I'm open-minded, so I took her to dinner. On the way, I lit a joint and asked her if she puffs. "Oh, heavens no! What would I tell my Sunday school children?" I said, "Okay, weed's 50-50 if some people do, some people don't." And I took her to the best restaurant I knew. I ordered the steak, she ordered the lobster. I asked for the second most expensive bottle of wine on the menu. When the waitress came to pour, she said she didn't drink. I said, "You don't drink?" "Oh, heavens no! What would I tell my Sunday school children?" Excellent food and sparkling conversation, but I'm bummed out. I don't know what to do with a girl like this. So I'm driving her home and pass a cheap motel. I figure, what have I got to lose? So I ask, "Want to get a room and knock boots?" She says, "I thought you'd never ask." I say, "Really? What are you going to tell your Sunday school children?" She says, "The same thing I tell them every week. You don't have to drink and do drugs to have a good time." A woman was invited to dinner at her boyfriend's parents' house for the first time. She was terrified. Nervous doesn't even begin to cover it. They sat down to a beautiful home-cooked meal. But between the nerves and the broccoli casserole, her stomach was not on board with the evening. About halfway through the meal, she felt a pressure building and quietly let out a small, polite psst. It wasn't loud, but it was definitely noticeable. Before she could die of embarrassment, her boyfriend's dad looked down at the dog lying under the table and said firmly, "Rusty, knock it off." She could barely believe her luck. She gave Rusty a grateful glance. A few minutes later, the pressure was back. This time, she let out a longer, louder one. "Rusty!" the father barked again. "I swear, if you don't quit—" Now she was getting confident, maybe even a little too confident. A third round hit her, this one massive, no hesitation. She let it rip like a freight train pulling into the station. The dad slammed his fork down and shouted, "Rusty, for the love of all that's holy, move away from her before she blows you to the next zip code." When Harold and Betty moved to Texas, Harold was determined to embrace his inner cowboy. So when he found a flashy pair of cowboy boots on sale, he bought them faster than you could say, "Yeehaw!" Strutting into the kitchen in his new kicks, chest out and ego bigger than a Texas steak, he asked, "Notice anything different, darling?" Betty glanced over her teacup. "New attitude?" Not satisfied, Harold disappeared into the bathroom, ditched everything but the boots, and reappeared buck naked, hands on hips like a rodeo champion. "How about now?" he asked, grinning. Betty looked him up and down, took a sip of tea, and said, "Whatever was sagging yesterday is still sagging today." Annoyed, Harold snapped, "It's sagging because it's admiring my boots." Without missing a beat, Betty replied, "Next time, Harold, buy a hat." A lady goes to the bar on a cruise ship and orders a scotch with 2 drops of water. As the bartender gives her the drink, she says, I'm on this cruise to celebrate my 80th birthday, and it's today. The bartender says, well, since it's your birthday, I'll buy you a drink. In fact, this one is on me. As the woman finishes her drink, the woman to her right says, I would like to buy you a drink too. The old woman says, thank you, bartender, I want a scotch with 2 drops of water. Coming up, says the bartender. As she finishes that drink, the man to her left says, I would like to buy you one too. The old woman says, thank you. Bartender, I want another scotch with 2 drops of water. Coming right up, the bartender says. As he gives her the drink, he says, ma'am, I'm dying of curiosity. Why the scotch with only 2 drops of water? The old woman replies, Sonny, when you're my age, you'll have learned how to hold your liquor. Holding your water, however, is a whole other issue. 3 married men sit at a bar, one ugly, one average, and one handsome. The conversation shifts to their love lives. The first ugly man says, my wife nor I are all that nice to look at, but we have a loving relationship with great communication. We both cook and clean and take care of each other. In fact, since we have trouble looking at each other in bed, we've started an open relationship. The second average man replies, that does sound like good communication. My wife is no supermodel either, but can be really cute at times. She does most of the cleaning, but I cook to balance things out. We've talked openly about expanding our relationship, but we ultimately decided we are happy as is, and the third handsome man interrupts to blurt out, well, my wife is a supermodel. She cooks, she cleans, and she does everything for me. And with none of that sappy communication bullshit you have to put up with. She just stays quiet and takes it. Oh, and did I mention she's incredible in bed? The first man pipes up, yes, I know. Brian was about to marry Beryl when his father took him to one side. When I married your mother, the first thing I did when we got home was take off my trousers, he said. I gave them to your mother and told her to put them on. When she did, they were enormous on her, and she said to me that she couldn't possibly wear them as they were too large. I told her, of course they're too big. I wear the trousers in this family, and I always will. Ever since that day, we have never had a single problem. Brian took his father's advice, and as soon as he got Beryl alone after the wedding, he did the same thing, took off his trousers, gave them to Beryl, and told her to put them on. Beryl said that the trousers were too big and she couldn't possibly wear them. Exactly, replied Brian. I wear the trousers in this relationship, and I always will. I don't want you to forget that. Beryl paused and removed her knickers and gave them to Brian. Try these on, she said, so he tried them on, but they were too small. I can't possibly get into your knickers, said Brian. Exactly, replied Beryl. And if you don't change your bloody attitude, you never will. A wife and her husband were throwing a dinner party for a lot of the major status figures in France. The wife was very excited about this and wanted everything to be perfect. At the very last minute, she realized that she didn't have enough snails for the party, so she asked her husband to run down to the beach with a bucket to gather some. Very, very much against his will, he agreed. He took the bucket, walked out of the door, down the steps, and down to the beach. As he was collecting the snails, he noticed a beautiful girl strolling along just a little further down. He kept thinking, wouldn't it be great if she would just come and talk to me? He went back to gathering the snails. He looked up, and the woman was standing close to him. They got talking, and she invited him back to her place. They were at her apartment, and they started messing around. It got so hot and heavy that he was exhausted afterwards and passed out. At 7 o'clock the next morning, he woke up and thought, oh my God, the dinner party. He got dressed, grabbed his bucket, and ran all the way back to his apartment. He ran up the steps. He was in such a hurry that as he got to the top, he dropped the bucket. There were snails all down the steps. The door opened, and a very angry wife stood in the doorway. He looked at her, then back at the snails and said, come on, lads, we're nearly there. As you lie back, your muscles tighten. You put him off for a while, searching for an excuse, but he refuses to be swayed as he approaches you. He asks if you're afraid, and you shake your head bravely. He has had more experience, but it's the first time his finger has found the right place. He probes deeply, and you shiver. Your body tenses, but he's gentle like he promised he'd be. He looks deeply within your eyes and tells you to trust him. He's done this many times before. His cool smile relaxes you, and you open wider to give him more room for an easy entrance. You begin to plead and beg him to hurry, but he slowly takes his time, wanting to cause you as little pain as possible. As he presses closer, going deeper, you feel the tissue give way. Pain surges throughout your body, and you feel the slight trickle of blood as he continues. He looks at you concerned and asks you if it's too painful. Your eyes are filled with tears, but you shake your head and nod for him to go on. He begins going in and out with skill, but you are now too numb to feel him within you. After a few moments, you feel something bursting within you, and he pulls it out of you. You lay panting, glad to have it over. He looks at you and, smiling warmly, tells you with a chuckle that you have been his most stubborn yet most rewarding experience. You smile and thank your dentist. After all, it was your first time having a tooth pulled. Naughty, naughty, excuse me. What were you thinking? Little Jimmy was failing math, and his dad was at his wit's end. After trying everything, extra tutoring, grounding him, taking away his games, nothing worked. So, desperate for change, he enrolled Jimmy in the local Catholic school, hoping the new environment might make a difference. Just a month later, Jimmy came bursting through the front door, beaming. "Dad, I got an A on my math test." His dad nearly dropped his coffee. "Are you serious? That's incredible!" He grabbed the paper from Jimmy's hands, eyes wide in disbelief. "This is amazing. What happened? Was it the smaller classes, the stricter rules? What turned things around?" Jimmy shrugged. "Honestly, Dad, when I walked into the school on my first day and saw that guy nailed to a plus sign at the front of every classroom, I figured they really take math seriously around here." Two buddies head up north for a moose hunting trip. They hire a bush pilot to fly them deep into the Canadian wilderness. Before they take off, the pilot gives them a stern warning. "Listen, I'll fly you in, but you're only allowed to shoot one moose. My plane can't carry more than that. Last year, 2 guys like you tried to bring back 2, and we crashed. The pilot died, and the hunters barely survived." The hunters nod seriously. "Got it. 1 moose. No problem." So the pilot flies them out and drops them off. Not long after, the guys shoot a moose and drag it back to the landing spot. But with time still on their hands, and with the memory of last year a bit fuzzy, they figure, "What the heck? Let's get another." By the next day, they have 2 moose waiting at the makeshift runway. The pilot arrives and immediately protests. "I told you, 1 moose! The plane won't make it with 2! But the hunters argue, "We're both pretty light. These moose aren't that big, and hey, the guy last year made it." The pilot hesitates, then finally agrees. They load everything up and take off. The plane struggles. It climbs a bit, then dips, struggles again until it clips a tree and crashes to the ground. The pilot is killed instantly. One hunter pulls the other from the wreckage. As they lay groaning in the dirt, one says, "Where are we?" The other looks around, then climbs a nearby tree for a better view. He peers out, then shouts down, "I think we're about a mile from where we crashed last year." The owner of an insane asylum is facing a major problem. The place is overcrowded. After discussing with his staff, he comes up with a solution: to ask each patient a simple question, and if they answer correctly, they can leave. The goal is to let enough patients pass the test so that the asylum won't be so cramped. The question is this. The employee will hold up a brick and ask the patients, "What do you see?" The first patient is tested. The employee holds up a brick and asks, "What do you see here?" The patient looks at it and says, "A car." The employee sighs and says, "Sorry, you'll have to stay for more treatment." The second patient is tested. The employee holds up the brick again and asks, "What do you see here?" The patient looks and says, "A tree." "Unfortunately," the employee replies, "you'll be staying with us a while longer." Then the third patient is tested. The employee holds up the brick one last time and asks, "What do you see here?" The patient looks at it, raises an eyebrow, and says, "It's a brick." The owner, delighted, exclaims, "Perfect! You've passed the test. You're free to go. In fact, take the brick with you as a souvenir." "Thanks," says the patient, grinning. As the patient walks out the door, he looks over his shoulder to make sure no one is watching. When he's certain he's alone, he gently cradles the brick in his arms. "We did it, Fluffy," he whispers. We're free. A man wakes up in a mysterious room. There's nothing in it but a ladder leading upward and a $10 bill on the floor. Suddenly, a disembodied voice echoes, "Accept what is offered, or climb the ladder to success." The man eyes the $10 and scoffs. "That's it? I'm climbing." He climbs the ladder. On the next floor, he finds $1,000 and a moderately attractive woman smiling at him. Again, the voice calls out, "Accept what is offered, or climb the ladder to success." Tempting. But he climbs again. Now he finds $50,000, a very attractive woman, the deed to a cozy house, and a job that pays twice his current salary. He pauses. Then the voice repeats, "Accept what is offered, or climb the ladder to success." He swallows hard and climbs again. This time it's overwhelming. $1 million in cash, bank records showing a net worth of $50 million, keys to his dream car, a mansion, and 2 breathtakingly beautiful women beckoning him. As he takes a step forward, the voice rings out once more. "Accept what is offered, or climb the ladder to success." He hesitates. Everything he's ever wanted is right here, but ambition whispers louder. Slowly he turns and climbs once more. This ladder feels different. Longer, darker. The air gets heavier. A foul stench grows with each step. Finally, he reaches the next floor and pulls himself into the gloom. There's no money, no women, no mansion, just a dim room and a figure hunched in the corner. The figure strikes a match and lights a cigarette. As the smoke curls up, the man recoils. The figure is enormous, disheveled, at least 400 pounds, and smells like he's never even heard of soap. The man stares in shock as the figure grins and steps closer. "Welcome," he says with a wheeze. "I'm Sess."